AOC's beef with Jill Stein. AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the congresswoman from New York, she was criticizing Jill Stein on Instagram after somebody asked her, and I quote, "How do I tell my friends who are Jill Stein voters they are wasting their time and effort?" An AOC begins to green her, basically criticize her, saying, you know, she's not gonna be president. Her campaign is quote unquote not serious, which is true, and that she is, that the campaign is predatory. What does this person do to grow power? Now, Jill Stein did respond to this, and I do want to watch this, and I want to give you my thoughts. But first, let's start with AOC, then we'll look at the response, and I'll give you my thoughts. For those of you who don't know, by the way, Jill Stein is the Green Party candidate for president. Here's a picture of her. Why I picked this picture in particular, I do not know, but there's a picture of her right there. Jill Stein, U.S. Green Party candidate, next to Dmitry Peskov, which many from the channel might know as Putin's spokesperson, as well as Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. Anyway, back to this.
Y'all, this is a little spicy, but I have thoughts. I feel like I should save this for a live. I'm not coming for people who are thinking about this. I'll talk to you. What I have a problem with is the fact that if you are running for president, you are the de facto leader of your party. And first of all, trust me on this. I run as a third party candidate in New York. I'm also run as a working families party candidate in addition to running as a Democrat. Because trust me, I've been on record about my criticisms of a two-party system. So this is not about that. But you are the leader of your party. And if you run for years and years and years and years and years in a row, and your party has not grown, and you don't add city council seats, and you don't add down ballot candidates, and you don't add state electeds, that's bad leadership. And that to me is what's upsetting. Because if you have been your party's nominee for 12 years in a row.
I forgot to say this. Jill Stein has been the Green Party's nominee. The Green Party is the cult of Jill Stein. That is what it has become. It is running Jill Stein over and over and over again. People outside the Republican Party could see that running Trump again might have not been the smartest strategy to win. But within the Republican Party, he was still loved and beloved, and so he got chosen. That happened on a much smaller scale with Jill Stein 3 times in a row. And if you're getting the same result again, including when the options were Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in the third parties performed the best, and Gary Johnson was the one getting the attention instead of the left-wing Jill Stein option, and then you do it again and again and you keep failing, it might be time to turn over the reins to someone else. If Joe Biden won an election, and the possibility that he couldn't on re-election, even though he just won one, was enough due to his age to encourage him to step down and replace candidates. Jill Stein has lost 3 times in a row and has made no headway, no gains, and not to even mention about her compromised status. And we're supposed to back her again for what reason? To feel good? It wouldn't make me feel good considering her stances on Ukraine, but to feel good? Let's be politically calculated. Let's use our vote effectively to help the most people.
4 years ago, and 4 years before that, and 4 years before that. And you cannot grow your movement pretty much at all, and can't pursue any successful strategy, and all you do is show up once every 4 years to speak to people who are justifiably pissed off, but you're just showing up once every 4 years to do that, you're not serious. You're not to me, it does not read as authentic. It reads as predatory.
Damn.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying it.
So she's just coming in for the campaign every 4 years and then checking out.
Because as a person, I endorse working families party candidates. I endorse DSA candidates. I take risks, and I endorse even in primaries against Democrats when it's merited. What does this person do to grow power for the...
My goodness. She tore her up. She absolutely tore her up. Now look, I largely speaking agree with AOC, and I want to say it is her calculations like this, which is why she's speaking at the DNC. She was able to connect with that crowd. She's gaining political power, important committee positions, because she's not crashing her boat on sunken efforts like Force the Vote. she's not wasting her time trying to appeal the lowest common denominator online, who are not going to be the ones that get you political power or the influence necessary to, for example, get a public option or even move further on healthcare, or, for example, the legalization of marijuana or more public housing, more investment in education. That's not how you're going to do it. And that doesn't mean abandoning your values, but it means being politically smart. And while some of these, we'll just say Justice Democrats and others are starting to drop, you know, we just saw Jamal Bowman go. We just had another one drop. You know, it's not, we don't know which ones are going to stay after the wave is done and which ones are going to go. But I think one reason why AOC is not even thought about as somebody who could really be outed anymore is because she is politically intelligent. She went into power. She saw the state of play and it started thinking, how do we build momentum long term? 3 or 4 votes is not enough to bring Medicare for all in this country. We don't even have a public option. And people are talking about La La Land right now. We need to build to these things. We need to build towards, you know, progressive healthcare options if that's stuff you care about, like I do. But people living in La La Land, and I think that's why she is a smart political operator who is doing well. And I'm happy that this is the way AOC is going. As for Jill Stein, a vote on Jill Stein is a wasted vote in every state. In every state. Honestly, not even just in the swing states, even in the other states, even if you don't like the two-party duopoly, because the problem is with Jill Stein is that she keeps going again and again and again. Stop reinforcing her ego. If you want the Green Party to win or offer somebody that might be able to, you know, not be compromised for reasons that, well, you know. Point is, run somebody else. Run somebody that can win, or run somebody that at least will get the party some more attention. Try something else. What about down ballot races? What has she done for down ballot races? I hadn't even thought about that, but that's a good point, AOC. It's not just about building a campaign every 4 years. It's about building a party, because the only way the Green Party is ever going to have influence is not by just coming out and making a bunch of noise and getting donations every 4 years. It's by winning on the local level, county, city, municipal, building up the state delegates, state congresspeople, state senators, building up attorney generals. That's how you build influence. Whether you start in one state, whether you try to spread it out, I don't know. But what has Jill Stein done in that direction? Where are the Greens now that they weren't 12 years ago? Here is Jill Stein's response to it, which, of course, we need to play, to be fair.
You're just showing up once every 4 years to do that? You're not serious. You're not, to me, it does not read as authentic. It reads as predatory.
Jill here. I'm about to board, but very quickly, I just wanted to thank AOC Pelosi so very much for her very authentic concern about growing green power.
She just, the thing is, we don't need to be, I'm not concerned about growing the Green Party, because I think the Green Party is a lost cause, especially with you at the helm. But she's just saying, if somebody's going to vote, and we're talking about the stakes of this election, why somebody in Florida would waste their vote on you when you're not even particularly like that good of a person, or like even that good of a candidate. I don't even have really experience I think could be well utilized at the top of the presidency. Just because you have some good policies, some progressive policies, does not mean you could lead the country. How would this woman even begin to try to push past Medicare for all? How would she even begin? The only place you could build up from is like a base within the Democrats, which had some people who were sympathetic to it, but she's going to do it outside of both parties. Like how, just think about this from a reasonable perspective, considering the stakes of this election, considering the climate crisis that she knows, that she acknowledges. How are we going to be wasting votes when we could get a candidate in office who doesn't even believe in climate change? So yes, if the Green Party had some momentum, then we could have a different discussion. But right now, it's investing into it's not even a political party. It's investing into a political fan club, the Jill Stein fan club. And until it is not the Jill Stein fan club, you can't even talk about third parties, putting aside all the structural disadvantages that would still motivate someone like me to not seek third parties under current circumstances.
Clearly, AOC is the attack dog du jour, and the Democrats are running scared. And
she is so self-centered. She is such an egotistical knuckle dragger. Oh, the Democrats are running scared. That's why they sent AOC after me, because I'm going to take away all the vote. Jill Stein, the better you do in these states, the more likely we have somebody as president who doesn't believe in climate change. That is the electoral math that is currently that is currently at play. That is it. That would be the only concern Democrats have about you. They don't think you're going to be president. They don't think the Green Party is going to build a movement that's going to change the country. They don't think you're going to have an influence on policy. The only actual effect Jill Stein could have on policy is electing somebody through her interception of votes, because Hillary Clinton dropped enough votes to Jill Stein in swing states to lose the election. Of course, not necessarily saying that Hillary would pick everyone up, but when the election is this historically close, the most effect you could really have on the race is by getting somebody who doesn't believe in climate change elected as a Green Party candidate. Other Green parties in other countries, you know what they do? When they see a situation like this, they coalition build. But Jill Stein's not a coalition builder. She's leading the personality cult of the Green Party.
Should be, because who wants to support a genocide? Who wants to vote for a genocide? And if there's anything that's predatory here, it's saying that your candidate is working tirelessly for a ceasefire.
To be clear, if Jill Stein became president of the United States, what's the plan? What's the plan to get Jill Stein to be president of the United States here? Okay, and even if she did, I'm very doubtful of her ability to get a ceasefire to stop the violence. But putting that aside, since we know she can't be president, what's the main impact this election could have on Israeli-Palestinian relations? The options are Harris or Trump. If one option gets elected, Harris, they're probably going to keep selling weapons to Israel from a semi-critical position, holding maybe back some weapons and trying to pressure them to stop and get a two-state solution. Is it enough? Is it good enough? Does it please everyone? Absolutely not. But you want to know what the other option is? We're not bombing them hard enough. Netanyahu's too weak. We want all these villages and settlements named after me. Trump settlements. You're going to have Trump Tower in Gaza. Are you insane? Like, I'm not... I understand the morality of not being able to vote for somebody who even at all aligns with a war that you disagree with. But this is not supposed to be a super, in my view, politics, just like protest endeavor. You can protest and make noise every other day of the year. This is the moment, even though you can't send a message with it, that is possible. This is the moment to be politically calculated with making sure you get the best outcome at the ballot box. And Jill Stein isn't an option.
When actually they are actively funding and arming genocide and actually refusing to even consider an arms embargo, which would bring the genocide to a screeching halt. AOC, who's supposed to be in leadership of the Democratic Party, it's amazing if she doesn't know about the anti-democratic tactics and strategies that the Democratic Party uses to crush and silence political opposition. They've been hiring an army of lawyers to throw competitors like me off the ballot. They've been hiring infiltrators and...
Look, I don't like any of this, but I'm going to be honest with you. Again, the only effect Jill Stein is going to have is not moving third party. It's not going to move the movement forward. It's not going to move third parties forward. It's not going to move progressive policies forward. It's not going to help the Palestinian people. The only effect she can have, realistically, by staying in the race, is helping Trump get elected. Or maybe after 3 failed attempts, bringing real attention to the issues affecting the climate. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think 4th time's the charm.
Tours and publicly posting job advertisements for those positions. They've been hijacking our public funding in order to keep us off the ballot. And they actually impersonated the Greens to throw us off the ballot in 22 in the Senate race for North Carolina, for example. How is that not fraud and election interference? Also, what's predatory here is stealing the signature issue of the Greens. Our Green New Deal launched in 2010, appropriated by AOC as her signature issue in 2018 without a mention of where it came from.
Can I just throw out there that let's say that this is 100% true, that it was word for word stolen, even though it probably had alterations and changes. She might have been slightly inspired. Let's just say it was word for word stolen. So what you're telling me is that you had an agenda, you didn't sell it to the public didn't hear about it, then 8 years later, AOC gets elected, and then the public starts to care about it. Sounds like she was able to advocate on the issue much better than the Green Party as an institution was, because people didn't know about the Green New Deal until AOC was running with it. Before then, people didn't know anything about the Green Party doing it. And again, this is because the Green Party doesn't have influence outside of the votes that they can take away from other parties. And that really is the only electoral effect currently third parties have. The Republicans have the same problem with libertarians.
So bottom line is Americans want more choices. We are that choice. We are the one choice, which is anti-war, anti-genocide, pro-worker.
When they say anti-war, what they mean is they want America to withdraw from world affairs and then let the wars happen without our conscience on them. That's what they mean. To be able to disentangle ourselves so we can be like, whatever's happening in Ukraine, not our problem.
Climate emergency. Check us out. Jill Stein.
And people could say I'm exaggerating, but look at this. She wants to cut and run at the earliest opportunity.
Russia proved after the war started that it was willing to negotiate and come to an agreeable solution. And unfortunately, the U.S. came in like a bully in the china shop along with the U.K. and destroyed that agreement. So that agreement was possible. That agreement happened. That agreement should have been.
Wait, if that was Cenk saying yeah, and the thing was, what was it? It was, listen what it was.
Willing to negotiate and come to an
agreeable solution. And Cenk said yes to an agreeable solution. Mind you, you know what? Let her finish, and then I'll talk about what she called an agreeable solution. Because I've talked about this before. Hassan made the same mistake. Well, it's not that surprising.
Russia proved after the war started that it was willing to negotiate and come to an agreeable solution. And unfortunately, the U.S. came in like a bully in the china shop along with the U.K. and destroyed that agreement. So that agreement was possible. That agreement happened. That agreement should have been carried forward. So this is a disaster, most of all for the Ukrainian people. And let me ask you, what is going to change the terms of the conflict here? It's the Ukrainians who are suffering. It's the Ukrainians who've basically lost a generation, who are now recruiting 50-year-olds. And I don't know, teenagers, whatever, but you know, they have the walking wounded. Ukraine is in desperate, horrible shape. How exactly is the United States going to keep this war going short of sending in our own troops? God forbid. There is a solution here, which is the solution that was put on the table at the very beginning. Now we're circling back, but under much more difficult terms of negotiation. The longer this goes on, the worse it is.
So Jill Stein, this is just Russian propaganda. Every single word of this is Russian propaganda. She could pitch it whatever way she wants. It's Russian propaganda. Number one, when you talk about Ukraine in this state, and you don't talk about the Russians having to recruit from many of the same population pools, because both Ukraine and Russia had post-demographic Soviet collapse. I mean, it collapsed, both the demographics. Both the Russians and the Ukrainians recruit people. Their average age is like over 40, both of them. So saying that, oh, this is an example how Ukraine, desperate relative to what? Because Ukraine, relative to United States military quality, very desperate position. Relative to Russian military quality, it's going to be calculated a little differently. So I don't really like the math or the implications that she's trying to put here. The other thing I want to say is about the deal. The deal was garbage. The deal was horrible. And the Ukrainians wanted to do anything but accept the deal. What the Russians wanted was to make the Ukrainians not have a settlement on the territorial issue, was to make the Ukrainians commit to not joining organizations like NATO that could dissuade future invasion. So there would be no ally to say stop the Russians from invading again in the future, and Ukraine would have to demilitarize. They would have to get rid of the vast majority of their military. They'd have to get rid of the majority of their tanks, the majority of their artillery guns, and the majority of their soldiers. And can I just say, they have lost those many tanks in this war 3 times over to the limit they were asking for, which was, I believe, about 300. And then the limit for artillery guns is 500. That might sound like a lot, because 500 is a big number if you're talking about, like, I don't know, cars or something. But when you're talking about artillery guns to hold back the largest country on the planet in largely artillery-intensive warfare, that's how many artillery guns they've lost so far. 85,000 troops to guard a border of 1,400 kilometers. How do you do that? How do you do that? That's not even talking about Belarus, because the Russians did invade from Belarus. Or the coast, because the Russians could do naval landings. And they're supposed to guard all of that with 85,000 troops after Russia illegally invaded them twice in 8 years. After the Russians committed in the 90s, they wouldn't if Ukraine gave up their guarantee of security nuclear weapons, which we said if they did, we'd assist them in a situation just like this, the very situation you don't want to assist them in. What would have happened if they got rid of their army and then in 3 years Russia invaded again and Ukraine wouldn't have any troops to defend itself? Would Jill Stein say, okay, send the troops? No, she indicates here she doesn't want to send the troops. So what would we do in that situation? We will have disarmed Ukraine from nuclear weapons in the 90s. We will have disarmed them again in 2022. And then we will have not come to their assistance if the Russians invaded again. She wants to disarm them and make them vulnerable to make her feel better. And then during the same time, the same question where she's talking about basically neutering the Ukrainian armed forces, while the Russian armed forces get to stay the same or grow, it doesn't matter. They don't get any limits. Yeah, because we all remember the troop limits on Germany, whatever. I don't want to talk about Treaty of Versailles. Point is, she doesn't understand the deal, or she thinks it's agreeable for Ukraine not to have a military after getting invaded twice in 8 years and having mass graves appear out their capital. So you get a mass grave outside your capital and you're supposed to say, oh, they should be the ones with all the power, the ones filling up mass graves. We shouldn't have any guns to defend ourselves. How naive could you be when we talk about hippy dippy bullshit and the hippie left, that right winger stuff? This is that equivalent. This is just naivete on the global stage. You want to talk about why Jill Stein is going to build any political party? Because her policies are clownish when it comes to serving as, number one, head of the armed forces, which is what the president is supposed to do. It's like one of the main requirements of the president. She couldn't do that. She couldn't properly dissuade invasion. In fact, I think someone like Jill Stein in office would cause wars because she would not be able to establish credible deterrence. I'm not saying that you need to go everywhere and be scary and ooh and bomb everything. But if you're just saying that your response to being invaded should be to demilitarize after they fill mass graves outside of your capital, this type of naivete is dangerous. Infuriating that this is a mainstream talking point. Hey, all your favorite streamers say it.